What is a system? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. What is a system? By definition, a system is a group of interrelated, interdependent, interacting elements of a complex whole. I mean, it sounds a lot like life to me, right? You have cause and effect, and you have elements, in this case, individuals, interacting with a complex whole. We'll take it from there. We'll take it from the normal definition, right? A little background: I do have a systems engineering degree. I got that at the United States Military Academy at West Point, that's what the fancy ring is for. I got a degree in systems engineering and philosophy, which to me were basically the same thing. One was the engineering side, and one was like the intellectual engineering side. So, interestingly enough, systems is sort of my area of specialty, whether it's engineering or the liberal arts humanities side. And I've been thinking about systems, gosh, 30 years now. So, yeah, a system is comprised of elements that are interacting. And when you say interacting or interdependent or however you want to say that type of action, right, really what these people are describing, and really what you get down to when you drill into systems engineering, is that all of those words are really just describing cause and effect. Interrelated, interdependent, interacting, cause and effect. All you are saying is that there's a whole system, there's a whole organism, and we'll say, for conceptual reasons, we'll just say, imagine that any system is a sphere, right? Or in 2D language is a circle. We'll even bring it down lower to our dimension, right? Say any whole organism is represented by a circle. Now, that system that's within that circle is comprised of any number of individual elements. Any number, completely variable. And those elements can be anything. The only requirement for them to be included in this conceptual definition or understanding of the system as a whole organism is that they are within that circle, and that they are interdependent and are playing a part in the cause and effect of the whole system. So the system represented by a circle, anything within that circle is an element that is contributing or affecting the function of the entire organism. Now, that view can be placed on basically anything. In the macro, we can put that on life itself. We can say that the entire whole of reality can be envisioned within that circle, and that any single part of reality itself, of life itself, of creation, is an element that is interacting in the chain of cause and effect of the system of life. Obviously, that's how I view it. Newsflash, spoiler alert. So with that in mind, if you ever do decide to journey back to God, prime creator, source, the emanating frequency, the cosmic egg, the center of center of center of center of centers, the center circle, at the beginning of the center circle, the center sphere inside it all, the first Russian doll inside the Russian doll set, the you take a DMT trip back to the center of all the elves working back to the center of where it emanates from, the circle inside the circle inside the circle. You rightly call that God. You can also call it the fundamental system of reality, of the base system of the entire life, is that everything is a element of life. And now we can just put it in a circle and just know that that's what it represents. The circle being the description of a completed, unified, operating system of some sort. Now, when we take it out of the macro and we just can take that perception, we can place it on anything in life, like literally anything. It doesn't matter. You could say, I want to know, I want to see how whatever an economic system works. Okay, fine. So you draw the circle in your mind and you go, let's put the economic system in question in there, and that means it has all the constituent parts, it has all the elements, all the fundamental parts of it that take it to work, all the interactive, interdependent elements, and then you can study it from that perspective, and you can just and you drill in. Once you have that general view, then you can focus in on the specifics, and then when you further go into the very very specifics, you can see the different variables and the weightings and how the cause and effects work in certain areas and what the outputs are, and then what the overall effect on the whole system is, and it gives you a very educated view on things. And personally, I have found this perspective in particular to be, it might be the most valuable perspective there is in terms of analyzing life itself and any constituent element of life. And that's where it gets very, I think, fun, but also very trippy, is that when you go, okay, this entire thing that I'm in is life, and now I have a perspective on it that is manageable in my mind, and that in any time I want to take the similar analytical process to any other part, which is still a part of life, because any other system is a subsystem to life, because life is the summation of all the systems of systems. It's systems of systems of systems. It goes all the way, right? It is the one. You zip it back to whatever you think the moment of actual creation for all existence is, and that's where the circle begins. That's where that circle begins. And arguably, or philosophically arguably, all life did when it became self-aware at that moment of knowing its circular totality was really a sphere, because it came into multidimensional space, but conceptually circular. They just started propagating that out in all directions infinitely forever as fast as it could. That's philosophically an explanation of the Big Bang. It doesn't matter the energies, the frequencies, rocks and planets and all the stuff that emanate from, but conceptually it was a total system that became self-aware, that exploded in every direction in time and space to make sure that the systems kept going, and that any systems that came out of that base level macro system was simply a subset system that through its initial propagation was always connected back to the initial system, to what we could call God. So everything feeds back into it. Everything's vibratorily connected back to the initial moment, to the prime source, to the prime creator, to the universal frequency. And that's before you even get into like the subsystems of how quantum works and how all these other things work. But basically with the general understanding that there was a primary macro system with this understanding propagating itself, and that all of them are compatible in that manner, because all of the top levels of the propagated systems are necessarily a replication of that initial concept. So they're all compatible in every direction. All the tops of the systems reach that universal level, which I believe is what people are describing when they say when you get to a state of transcendence, that's a description of your journey from being a constituent element part, like a human being having a human experience, being an individual constituent part of the system of life. And as the perspective raises and you can start to see the different elements that you're interacting with, which are numerous, get to a certain level where, depending on the system that you've ascended through, you get to that macro level of that particular system, and you look around and you go, oh, well, this system is like the base template for systems in general. Oh, well, where'd that come from? And then you backwards engineer that to the propagated the interconnected propagated systems that go back to the initial primary system, which is God, then you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then you look around and go, okay, well, I guess transcendentalism. Okay, cool. And then usually once you get to transcendentalism for like a long time, then you go, well, it's got it. Now there's a nice view, and now I want to get back into it and enjoy my life, enjoy the particulars of the causes and effects. And now that you know how it works, you go back and just have a good time with it, right? Have fun. That'd be a different video. Um, but to give some more practical examples, you can use it for anything, big or small. You just anything can be put under the lens of a system. And the questions before you give the rigorous analysis, you just get to say, okay, cool. Have I figured out what's in that circle? Do I have enough of the understood operating elements to see how this works? That's why I think, like when you give kids Legos, or yeah, like Legos are a good example where, okay, cool, you're gonna try to build out this system, and you need all the parts. So all the parts affect each other, and you need them. And if you're missing parts, you find out as you build it. Then you have to go search for the parts, or you have to figure out which ones work. And it's pretty simple. It's pretty concrete when you look at those types of examples. Um, Obviously, when you get more mature as an adult, and that's usually when people start, they start taking interest in politics and things. Because, like, for instance, politics is a system of trying to have a way to make representational decisions about important interconnected elements of life that affect the general population of people living in that system. And that's why most of the time, a lot of people's first real exposure with systems and how they work and their interest in them and their importance and their power, comes through like political means. But that being said, literally everything we're dealing with is a system. It's just a matter of figuring out what is the way to initially view that particular system so that you know what's operating in that particular circle, right? And that circle can tell you the function of the system. It can be the name of the system. It can be the output. It can be the general output, and it can be whatever. And you get to experiment with it, which is fun. I mean, you could look at a lake and go, "Oh, well, I'm going to treat this lake as a system, right?" And then, because you say ecosystem, well, an ecosystem is a collection of systems, right? Ecosystem is trying to describe the biological habitat of Earth and its commensurate elements, right? So, but if you zoom in, but an ecosystem on the macro consists of everything, right? All the lakes, all the oceans, all the dirt, all the air, all the everything. But if you want to zoom in, you go, okay, let me look at the lake. Okay, cool. We're gonna look at this lake as its own ecosystem, and then you go, oh, well, there's like so many animals and so much water and so much air and so many elements and like so many seasons and da 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 da, and then you can build out a model of it, and you have a good operating model of what that system is. All with the understanding that it is a sophisticated, complex whole unit when looked at such of itself, comprised of all these constituent interacting elements. Now, I believe that every human brain has that innate understanding in it, because I think that was one of the evolutionary gains that we made as a species, like living amongst animals as animals for a long time, and then activating our brains so that we can start to come up with these concepts. And I do believe that the understanding of nature and life as a system was the primary intellectual advancement of the human species that allowed us to start managing things and start seeing ways out of sort of like the web of the law of the jungle. I think that is what, when we were able to start doing analysis of, going beyond just hunter-gatherer things, being able to start seeing the elements of the natural system that we sort of wanted to take conscious control of, and start picking and choosing which elements we wanted to manage to create, the system of civilized society or organized living or controlled living or governed living, however you want to describe it, the system of modern life came through living natural life, understanding it as a system through trial and error and intellectual analysis, and then finding the parts that we wanted to bring in to be able to manage within the circular living, the circle system of civilized life. And then, of course, within that, innumerable systems within that. It's sort of all of these systems sort of fractalize. Like when you watch a fractal, or when I watch a fractal, I'm mainly just seeing systems. They're just like and those are visual representations of all of the interconnected systems. And I think if you've ever done psychedelics and you watch fractals, like you'll know exactly what I'm saying. They're basically reality wormholes filled with systems. And I think that is the main. I think it's the main conceptual understanding and linkage of the entire universe. It's just that everything's interconnected systems, and it's sort of a fail-safe because you got to think from the perspective of if you're propagating the initial system in the void, probably the primary engineering requirement at that moment is just to ensure that it never ceases. Because if you don't know how you came into being out of the void, your probably number one priority is going to be just to make sure it keeps going. And so you would want a sort of like natural encryption to occur so that nobody could back engineer and destroy it, or outside forces couldn't destroy it. So if you can make infinite, eternal, interrelated systems where people don't no constituent part can ever figure out every interdependent part of the system so that it fractalized itself, it would be unbreakable. Create an unbreakable chain of interconnected systems that are interconnected micro and macro that never stop propagating, that always have the initial feeling of the Big Bang, of the initial awareness of the initial birth of itself. A system that gives birth to itself to keep giving systems that give birth to themselves that are interconnected, interrelated on the micro and macro, but easily accessible to all the constituent parts when they need to, but to such a degree in depth that no individual element in the system can ever technically gain full awareness of all the particulars of all the systems, although they can arrive at this like general understanding of the concepts of all of them, which is fair to activate free will, but to a degree and depth and complexity that no particular element could ever reasonably attempt to interfere with its operation, like in toto, maybe in minor circumstances or whatever, but that it would be so massive and so amazing and so unceasing in its striving to live and provide life to all of its constituent parts that it could never be stopped. So a system, a perfect system. Well, that's what I got today for systems. Thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. Hopefully you found this helpful. Hopefully it helps you see your own systems and the system we're all living in.